Great. Welcome to all of you. I think there are over 50 people attending this one, so really pleased from all over. I am Helen Gagnaris, chair of the Icon Archaeology group, and this is the first of our lunchtime lectures for this year. The next one is in March on the conservation of the Galloway hoard. So hope you can attend that one as well. And we're always looking for ideas for these events. So please do just contact a member of the group if you have an idea. They work really well, and we're pleased to have a range of topics. Would be great. Louise has gone over the housekeeping. The recording will be available later via the Icon website. I was very fortunate to see this spectacular exhibition at the Fitzwilliam before it closed in January. And we really appreciate the time the speakers are giving, especially, I think these are the weeks they're actually packing it to go back to Kazakhstan, so it must be a really busy time. Susi Pancaldo was conservator for the exhibition, and she'll do the introductions. So you're in for a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you to the Icon Archaeology group for inviting us to speak about this wonderful project. As Helen said, I'm Susi Pancaldo. I'm an archaeological conservator whom some of you may know me from my many years at UCL, working particularly for the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology. I've joined the Fitzwilliam Museum as conservator of metal objects in July 2019. And for this exhibition, I'm had the great honor of being the liaison conservator, along with a liaison technician. The exhibition ran from the 28th of September and is only just closed in January 30th. Together with the team at the Fitzwilliam Museum, I and the liaison technician sort of arranged all of the conservation and technical work required for managing the loan. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We just played a small part in the larger project. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Rebecca Roberts and Saltanat Amir, who I'm both very grateful for agreeing to join us today, as both were also instrumental in conceiving the project and bringing it to fruition. Just want to note that Rebecca has to leave at 1 p.m. So if there are any questions for her, if you could just put them in the chat and then we'll deal with them when we can. So Dr. Rebecca Roberts is the curator of the Gold of the Great Steppes. She's a research associate at the Fitzwilliam Museum and also a project coordinator for the McDonald Institute for Archaeological Research at the University of Cambridge. In addition to curating the critically acclaimed Gold of the Great exhibition, she also manages the Arcadia Fund, the Mapping Archaeological Heritage in South Asia at the University of Cambridge's McDonald Institute. And in that project, she's working along local stakeholders in the creation of an online database to document and manage vulnerable archaeological heritage in Pakistan and Northwest India. And we also have here Saltanat Amir, who is from Kazakhstan and is currently a PhD student studying under Rebecca. And Saltanat's dissertation topic is entitled Goldsmithing Technologies, Organic Materials, and Funerary Rituals in the Saka Societies of the Eurasian Steppe during the Iron Age. She's been awarded a Harding Distinguished Postgraduate Scholarship from the university. And I'm very grateful Saltanat has agreed to share some of her discoveries so far with us. So to give you an overview of our talk today, Rebecca is going to talk about the archaeological landscape in Kazakhstan, both ideologically and physically, a bit about the Saka people, and then the development of the research program and exhibition. I'll then share a few of the slightly unusual aspects of the loan and how some of the sort of behind the scenes things that we did in order to make it happen in a short amount of time. And then the bulk of the talk will be Saltanat talking about this amazing material. So we will pass on now to Rebecca.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Susie, and very great, huge thanks to Icon for inviting me here to speak today. This is a real delight. So yes, as Susie said, I'm just going to give an overview and give some background so that I can really give the floor to Susie and Saltanat, whose research and will be and work will be of far more interest, I'm sure, but this will at least set the stage. So Gold of the Great Steppe was an exhibition that was entirely curated, created, built, transported, installed during the pandemic. And a team of us first went out to Kazakhstan from the Fitzwilliam Museum in early March 2020. This is a photograph of us all in the museum. Archaeologists looking uncomfortable in suits is the title I like for this one. But we met up with key members of the museum, the East Kazakhstan Regional Museum of Local History, who is our lending museum, together with the archaeologists who excavated the material, Professors Zainullah Samashev and Professor Abdesh Tolibayev. And we're incredibly grateful, especially to Svetlana Nurgazieva, who is the director of the museum and has been incredibly generous with her time, with her loans, and in facilitating the entire exhibition. You can just see here a list of the different organisations and individuals who have collaborated to bring this exhibition together. And it really was, it was and remains a testament to the sheer will of all these people and institutions to bring this into being under incredibly difficult circumstances, both the pandemic, but also the tragic and dreadful events of January 2020 in Kazakhstan, which we are all very much in our thoughts still. Okay, next slide, please, Susie. Thank you. So just to give you an idea of where this material has been excavated and what we mean when we talk about the Great Steppe. So we use the term great in sense of it being very big. This green area you can see here shows the full expanse of the Eurasian steppe zone. So this area of mostly grassland, open grassland, which stretches, as you can see, all the way from the Black Sea area in the west, and then a bulk of it reaching up to the Altai Mountains, and then the eastern steppe stretching away into Siberia. So we're talking about an absolutely enormous area of steppe zone over which interactions have happened for many, many thousands of years, but of which the Saka people in the Iron Age were particularly active and real movers and players in this landscape. You can see here as well the red area, that's the East Kazakhstan region as it stands today, and that's where all of our material in the exhibition came from and where it's been excavated. I should say as well, the materials, the archaeological materials, were all excavated by Kazakhstani archaeologists funded by the Department of Culture of the East Kazakhstan region. So it's very much, we're talking very much about Kazakh material interpretations and research that we were highlighting here. And that was particularly important in designing and interpreting the show. Next slide. Sorry. Thank you. So this is just a map to show you where our material has come from. We had material from 3 primary cemeteries. And I'll show you what a cemetery looks like in a minute. And also, so those cemeteries are Birel, which you can see up in the top right-hand corner, nestled against the Altai Mountains, Yelakisazi and Shilikti, which you can see to the south, Yelakisazi, which is at the foothills of the Tarbagatai low mountain range, and Shilikti, which sits in between these 2 low mountain ranges on a wide open plain. We've got further to the south there the site of Urja, which is actually a chance find of a female burial that was discovered while a road was being built. But I just popped that on the map because we had a reconstruction of that burial. It's particularly important, a woman who was buried with a variety of medicinal herbs. So even though we didn't have the archaeological material, we brought a wonderful reconstruction of her with this fantastic gold headdress that she was wearing. And then in the top left there, up in the northwest, you can see Akbao, which is the settlement site. So the majority of the material was from burial contexts, with another amount from this recently discovered settlement. And the burials themselves are burial mounds, which are highly visible. So Susie, you go to the next slide, you can see what they look like. So this is the site of Yeliky-Sazy. This photograph, the credit's actually not showing up very clearly, but this is taken by Yevgeny Domashev, who is a photographer from East Kazakhstan, who took these wonderful photographs for us, which we have used in the publication and the catalogue, and also in the exhibition itself, to really give a sense of what landscape looks like. So you can see here a line of burial mounds known locally as kurgans, and they're built in lines, and they tend to follow high points or significant features in the landscape. For example, ridges, as you see here at Yeliky-Sazy, which is primarily a swampy area with lots of ridges, rivers crossing through it, or they're following lines, for example, watersheds or dry riverbeds, prominent places in the landscape. And the Saka really had an incredible sense of landscape, of place, and really of drama and beauty in their choice of burial mounds. And these mounds themselves seem to have been used to mark territory, to manage landscapes, and to establish their place within landscapes, and to show off which elites perhaps had claim to those landscapes. And we know that Saka society was hierarchical. It had leaders and elite members, and a common class as well. We see that partly from these huge burial mounds that tend to contain one or two individuals, very often buried with horses as well. And also we know from writings by Herodotus, for example, and also the ancient Persian texts, which name leaders and describe a bit about the society. The Saka people themselves didn't write down their own histories. So everything we know about them comes from either what other people have written about them, or from the material that we see physically, the physical material culture, which is rather skewed, because as you can see here, the burial mounds are still today highly visible on the landscape in Kazakhstan, which means they've been looted and excavated for many, many hundreds and even thousands of years. So it makes them a very high priority for current excavation in order to preserve the material. But it also means they are still vulnerable to looting today. And even between excavations seasons, some of these burials have been looted. They're known widely to contain gold, and the attraction has been there. We've got evidence that they were looted in the past as well, even quite soon after burial. So the lure of gold has withstood thousands of years for good and for ill. Next slide. Okay, so this is Kurgan 4, burial mound 4 at the Yeliky-Sazy cemetery in the second group of burials. There are about 300 burial mounds at Yeliky-Sazy, and at the other cemeteries as well, usually contain around 200 to 300 burial mounds. So this burial has been excavated by Professor Zainola Somashev, and this is showing it just post-excavation, and he's developed techniques in order to excavate the kurgans, which allows study and access to what's buried inside, but also a study of the construction, but also leaving them in a way that the construction of them can be seen and preserved and shown to the public in the future as well, and making ways for the burial mounds themselves to be part of that story, as well as the wonderful gold and objects that are preserved within inside. At Yeliky-Sazy, preservation was quite good, so with the preservation of some leather objects, some fragments of wood, which appear to be preserved probably through a sort of freeze drying process, we think. So it's a continental climate. You have extremely hot summers, sometimes reaching 40 degrees centigrade, and then extremely cold winters, again sometimes reaching minus 40 degrees centigrade. So we're talking about extremes of climates, which is I think caused freeze drying here. But further north, particularly at the sites of Birel, and then further in the Altai Mountains, for example, the cemetery of Pazyryk, burials tend to be dug down into a chamber, which allows then the formation of permafrost, and particularly you can see the stones covering the top of this mound. So it acts like a sort of giant ice house. And then so at the site of Burrell in particular, there is absolutely exceptional preservation of organics. So we had things such as textiles, woolen textile, textile made from textiles that have been woven from wool, but also felt. Leather, skin, fur, hair, wood. Is absolutely incredible preservation of organics, which is really exciting, in addition to the gold, of course. Next slide. So this is a reconstruction of the Saka youth who was buried in Kurgan 4. He was about 17 or 18 when he died. This is actually a reconstruction which shows partly the things that he was buried with, the gold objects in particular, the scabbard, the bow case and quiver that he has on his left hand, the gold torque around his neck, and then the shoes that he has with tiny gold beads that I'm sure Saltanat will talk about later, but also includes some additional material that was discovered in a hoard, which was deposited just outside the center of the burial. And so it's sort of an amalgamation to create this fabulous outfit that he's wearing. So you can see the date of this is about 800 to 550 BC. The Saka people emerged in the Altai region from around 900 BC onwards, firmly established by 800 BC. And then they endured, and the Saka people endured until the end of the 3rd century BC. So we're talking about many hundreds of years that this culture endured. The Saka were one of the Scythian peoples, and they were one of the earliest groups of Scythians to emerge in the Great Steppe and really start to establish the Scythian culture. So the Saka were of the Scythian culture, but they were some of the earliest creators of it, with this beautiful animal style art, which you'll see images of later, these beautifully stylized animals, but particularly having this bow and arrows, horse riding and animal husbandry. So they had horses are incredibly important, but they also had sheep, goats and cattle as well. And then this short dagger that you'll see as well. And these are symbols and lifeways that you find across the steppe region. So these are a highly connected people engaged in a really complex society. Next slide. So I'm going to whiz through these very quickly just to give you the themes of the exhibition and the main messages that we really wanted to convey with some of the objects in the exhibition. So we had 4 themes, and the first theme really was the place and people. So really giving a sense, who were the Saka and what can we understand about them? And that really centered on this burial of this Saka youth in Kurgan 4. What's important to note, though, is that his burial was not the only one in Kurgan 4, and he was buried alongside a younger female relative, most likely his sister. She was about 13 or 14 when she died, and her grave was sadly almost entirely looted, and all that remained, I'll show that in a minute, was a little bone object, possibly a weaving tablet, that was remained among her scattered bones. And by chance, this male burial, this teenager, was not seen by the looters and remained intact. And this is only the 2nd time since that a Saka period burial has been discovered unlooted, untouched on the territory of Kazakhstan. And the last one was actually discovered in 1969 and has become a national symbol of Kazakhstan. It sits on sort of Nelson's column in Republic Square. You may have seen in photographs of the recent events, and is also found on the banknotes as well. So the Saka people are so central still, and you can see their landscape endures today on the territory of Kazakhstan. Next slide. So the second theme was really exploring the symbolic world and what we might understand about how the Saka organized and thought about the land around them and the animals and the meanings and attributes that the animals had. The form of the animals themselves, which animals are in association. We see, for example, themes of predators and prey. We see different realms depicted, the high mountain zone, the sky, the land, the water, all seems to be organized in a way perhaps implying a mythology, a religion, a way of understanding and contextualizing that landscape symbolically, but also perhaps reflecting social organization and social dynamics within Saka society. Next slide. Our third theme really drew on Saltanat's research, and Saltanat and I work particularly closely together for this theme, and this is about the material world. So looking at the materials, the artifacts, the objects that the Saka created, how they created them, also about their economy. What were they eating, and where were they living, and also how connected they were, and the exchange networks that they were able to tap, that they managed and tapped into and engaged with. But really that material understanding of the world, and the objects they created, and where they made them, and where the materials came from. Next slide. And the final theme really was a bit more reflective and thinking about where are we now? What does this mean for us today? What does it mean for us standing in the Fitzwilliam Museum in England, looking at these objects that we are disconnected from by thousands of years and thousands of miles, and yet intensely connected on a human level? And the human hand was really such a strong theme that ran throughout the exhibition, really seeing those people behind the objects, but also looking at some of the questions, whose truth are we telling? And you can see at the bottom right here, we have this little bone object that was found with the teenage girl in Kurgan 4. And we ended the exhibition with this, just as a reminder about the information that is lost to us in archaeology, and needing to be aware of how much we can't say about people, and how our interpretations perhaps are informed by the material we have, but not wanting to forget the lens and through which material comes to us archaeologically, and where our own biases today might be leading us to certain interpretations or assumptions that we're making about this material. And one of the big assumptions, you can see this banknote here, and you can just see the figure standing there, and that is this Saka warrior known as the Golden Man. But again, a teenager who aged probably around 17, whose bones it was actually not possible to determine 100% whether it was in fact a man or whether it was a female burial. So we've got even questions here with a figure who's become monumentalized, and yet there are still many, many questions that we can ask of this material. Next slide. So it's just to show you the physical layout of the exhibition, and the different colours you can see here just reflect the themes. So we started with in the bottom right hand corner, and sort of led visitors through the exhibition with these themes, grouping the objects. You can see that oblong shape in purple there in the bottom right hand corner. That was the burial of the teenager that we actually printed a picture of the skeleton from the excavation drawings and laid the objects out as they were found. And we felt that's particularly important to really give that context of discovery and the context of the objects. Next slide. So it's just a 3D rendering to show you what it looked like, and you can see the way that the space there was broken up, and we wanted to have sort of a rhythm within the exhibition and within the space, so that visitors were led with a certain rhythm through the different themes, and perhaps also evoking that sort of sense of moving through the steppe, particularly on horseback, having this kind of rhythm of moving through different environments and moving across the steppe. Next slide. And this is the photograph of what the exhibition looks like. It's a bit overexposed, but you can see we had these huge landscape photographs, and it was really important to evoke that sense of landscape and what it is like to be in East Kazakhstan, which has an incredibly varied landscape of rivers and steppe and mountains, incredibly varied and rich and complex, in the same way that the Saka themselves were a society that was incredibly rich and varied and complex. So really trying to give that sense of that world and bringing people into it, while at the same time, having a pace that people could just explore as well at their own pace. That leaves that's everything I wanted to say. Hopefully that's set the scene for the more detail, but thank you very much, and over to you, Susi.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That's great. I am going to just talk a little bit about some of the technical work behind the exhibition, just because it's always interesting to share. And there were some unusual factors about the loan the biggest one being that there was quite a long delay from when it was first conceived and was going to be displayed, but because of the pandemic and various other issues, the schedule kept changing up until quite soon before the material was to be, the loan agreements were signed and the material was to be sent to the UK. And so that of course meant that things like the design process, as well as the planning for receiving the material and installing it, everything was sort of shrunk. So we, in addition, because of the nature of the material and the fact that there were so many organic materials, then the research on some of them hadn't been done yet, and yet we had to apply for CITES permission for some of the materials to come to the UK. And thanks in large part to Saltanat and Rebecca, who were in Kazakhstan before the loan traveled, they were able to help sort out some of those issues. But, you know, from our practical point of view, it just meant that things had to be accelerated. So as is usual for the Fitzwilliam Museum, and I think most museums, you start with an object list and then you can use that to communicate with the exhibition team, the registrars and the lenders. And in this case, it was absolutely critical that we had this cloud communication because things were changing on a daily basis in terms of which objects were coming. Decisions had to be made about whether we thought the we could manage those some very, very fragile materials. We also had very little documentation. So some of the materials, both those that had been excavated in previous years, but also things that have been excavated during the pandemic, we knew, we were told from the archaeologists in Kazakhstan that things had been treated, but we didn't have access to those conservation reports. And we only had very minimal photographs that were provided by the museum, and then sometimes from our from our own team, but that's all we had to go on. So we used this Google Drive spreadsheet, and that was really very helpful because it meant that we could sort of keep on top of things. Each team, the conservators, the technicians, and everybody we were able to record their concerns, and then as decisions were made and things were sorted out, the list could easily be updated and shared not only within the museum, but also with external people such as the art shippers and the museum, obviously, in Kazakhstan. So that was really, really critical. And I'm really glad because this system was relatively new at the Fitzwilliam Museum to put everything on this shared Google Drive and in these very clear folders of what was what. And that was really very critical. Another aspect that we got involved with, we being the conservators and technicians, was to help with the showcase design and specifications. And of course, again, because there was not a lot of time, we were very grateful that the designers took on board that the showcases needed to be relatively simple, easy to access, but could also be modified to deal with materials that we didn't know the condition would be, whether they would be, we had lots of fragile organics, and we didn't know what condition they were going to arrive in, and as well as fragile metals that were also, from the photographs, not always clear what the condition would be. So the design of the showcases was very simple, and all of the showcases were made to be able to accommodate silica gel cassettes and environmental monitoring equipment. And in addition, our technician had specified that the decks be made out of plastizote with fabric over it. And the idea of that was that we weren't sure at all whether we would need to be pinning materials. And one of the very nice aspects of this project was that a number of people got involved, conservators and technicians, because of the time frame. It was a short time frame, and also happened to fall at the end of the leave year, and we had a very busy summer, and so it had to be more than just a few of us who were going to be helping with all the processes. So we worked out a very careful schedule of who was going to be around when, and then we also ran training sessions for each other. In this case, our technician ran pinning sessions for technicians as well as conservators, both from the Fitzwilliam Museum and from the University of Cambridge the other museums at the University of Cambridge as part of the consortium. And that was really very nice that we were able to manage to do that, even, sort of helping us in the fact that we needed to be have people on standby, but it also was an opportunity that we don't always get to share with each other. So we also needed to communicate with the art shippers. So they built all the crates, and with our registrar worked out a labeling system, so we knew exactly what would be packed where. This is because, again, there wasn't much time, and we weren't sure what resources would be available in East Kazakhstan. So everything was planned in the UK, and then the crates and the materials were all shipped to Kazakhstan. We also were able to sort of highlight issues that we were concerned about, like how we wanted to be able to get as much information about how things would be packed, so that we knew what to expect when the materials arrived. And you can see, for example, in the bottom right here, there was this felted sheep's wool object, and this is all we knew about it, was from this photograph, which was not very sharp, and we weren't quite sure what we were going to get. So for certain materials, such as that one, we did ask to have to be able to see the object as it was packed. The shippers in Kazakhstan were wonderful, and they did take some notes on the condition of things, but obviously they had to work in a very tight schedule. So we highlighted a few things that we felt that we needed to see, but otherwise we had to rely on the notes that they gave us. But you can see that there are some very vulnerable materials, so we tried to learn as much as we could. We did, in some cases, for example, on the upper right, there's this hair braid, which we actually said we would prefer not to have travel, because we could see from the photograph that lots of bits had already fallen off. And Rebecca was, and it was very kind in sort of understanding that this was a big concern for us, because we just didn't know enough about its condition to safely feel that we could, travel it safely and protect it while it was here. So we did on occasion say no. Another saving grace was to use Microsoft mail merge. So because the material was not coming with any condition reports, we needed to be able to create those ourselves. So we had a record. And we did that by converting the spreadsheet and creating a template for the condition report, and then using the information on the spreadsheet and having it imported into the template. So we had a starting point when the materials arrived, and that was also very critical and helpful. And likewise, we set up, before arrival of the loan, a sort of a process for how we were going to unpack, check conditions, photograph, and set things aside for installation. And again, because we're a team of people and it was almost like a relay, we needed to make sure everybody was sort of up to speed in how we were going to do this, and to try to get the best documentation we could in the time that we had. So again, this was a really wonderful opportunity. Our head of photography gave us all training in Capture One, which is a sort of tethered captured software program that's actually quite sophisticated. We could do things. We had a very streamlined procedure for getting the color balance correct. And we lined up all of our laptops with the software and our cameras and hard drives and everything, so that we could have a number of people working on it and still manage to photograph everything. And then the photographs were put into the condition reports. For mounting and installation, there were some tricky matters. You can see there were 3 human mannequins and then 1 horse costume that was coming, but it was coming without its mannequin, without its model horse, because that was just too expensive and difficult to transport. So at very short notice, our amazing technicians designed and built this Perspex mannequin. And I won't go into the detail. This I'm sure this will be published, but it was quite a feat to even just to figure out what the size should be. And the senior technician told me that they actually had to Google Siberian horse to find out exactly, what the differences might be from I don't know enough about horses, but basically they learned a bit about the proportions of the material because we didn't have any measurements and we didn't even know exactly how many pieces were coming. We just had these photographs that you could see. So using SketchUp, they designed a perspex model and then put it together in a way so that it could be disassembled if anybody desired to use it in the future. And in fact, I think it will be eventually going to Kazakhstan. Also little tricks like on the upper right, there are these shoe beads, which Saltanat will be talking about. Our technicians built these sort of dips in the underneath the decks in order to be able to contain them because they are tiny, tiny and very easy to lose. And so the idea was to be able to contain these things in a way so that they could be safely handled, put on display and handled. There were a few special metal mounts that were made by external contractors. Those will also go to Kazakhstan. And then another big element of what we were involved with was just helping Saltanat get the material that she needed to do her research, because again, she was doing all her work under time pressure. So from the moment the loan arrived, we were preparing materials for her to take. There were some materials that came just for her research, but then also there were all the material that was on display needed to be investigated as well. So all throughout the exhibition, we were taking out and couriering along with Saltanat and her daily journeys back and forth, and Rebecca to the McDonald Institute so that the research could be done. And yes, it was a lot of work, but it was very well worth it. And I'm very excited to see what Saltanat has discovered. So with that note, we'll pass on to Saltanat. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hello, everybody, and I hope that you can see my screen at the moment. Let me just go to the... Hello, everybody. My name is Saltanat Amir. As have been told already, I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, and these materials are the core part of my research. The exhibition itself is called Gold of the Great Steppe, but as you already realized that we have been able just to deliver more than gold. I think that about more than 30% or about 30% of the whole collection represented on the exhibition consisted of organic made materials as well as stone. So and I will try just to show you not only gold but also what we in the frame of the research project, what we are going to make and what kind of analysis we're going to make with the organic materials. But before we start, let me just a bit of introduction to Kazakhstan itself, because I think that this is how we usually, when we think about the steppe region, this is the classical view, how we see the steppe region, that is the plain areas, open areas, very, very favorable for the livestock pastoralist societies. But first of all, let me just show you this. This is how big Kazakhstan is. This is in comparison with Europe. So it's huge. And of course, when we have such a vast area, such a big territories, the environmentally, it is very, the variety is huge. So we have not only the steppe regions, but mountain ranges. We have alpine meadows. We have forests, taiga, deserts. We have very fertile valleys, absolutely beautiful, beautifully suitable for agriculture. So everything in Kazakhstan. And here we have this East Kazakhstan, the region of Kazakhstan we're going to talk about, and in the artifacts that came from this region. It is comparable, the territory of East Kazakhstan is comparable with the territory of my beloved Ukraine. So it is huge. And what is also interesting that some of the resources, for example, like gold, or for example, like water, more than half of the all resources of these resources of Kazakhstan are concentrated in this region. This is very, very rich region from all perspectives. And that is how they look like. We're talking now about the Altai mountains. That is how it looks like. It is a beautiful territory. It's not only beautiful from the landscape point of view, but it is very rich from flora, fauna point of view, but also mineral resources. Let me just very briefly tell you about the landscapes that we can that you can find in East Kazakhstan, about the fauna and flora. You can see different felines, different animals, different plants, also mineral resources, because this part of Altai, in Kazakh language, it is called Kandi Altai, and this translated as Ors Altai. So it is very rich in mineral resources, including gold, tin, copper, and semi-precious stones. And very important for metallurgy as well. This is resources of wood. It is very foresty region, and also water. More than 40% of all Kazakhstani water are located on the territory of East Kazakhstan. But let me tell you about a bit of aims of my PhD research. First of all, is the my specialization, the main specialization is archaeometallurgy, and at the moment it is goldsmithing. And of course, I'm interested in the chemical composition of the artifacts and their manufacturing technologies. Identification of sources of gold, provenance analysis, whether these objects have been made locally from and what gold resources have been used for production of these gold resources. But what I'm really interested in the cross-craft interaction with organic materials, because we see that in many cases we see that the organic objects, organic materials made objects are covered or decorated by gold plaques, by gold foil, and that is I think the most interesting thing. And all these aims, if they achieved, they will give me a chance to reconstruct the burial ritual, combining these multiple analytical methods, which we are going to use for organic and inorganic materials. But let me start. Just that is the how I see the process. So first of all, we start with metal artifacts. We then make analysis of the organic materials, wood objects, and then we merge it together, and then we will go in to see and reconstruct the burial ritual. But let me start with the organic materials. That is one of the examples of these materials. For example, it's like a fur coat, like the antler plaques or leather garritas. And that was the we only have 4 months from the beginning of the exhibition till the very end of the exhibition to actually to take all the samples and to take all the analysis that we plan to make. So analytical approaches that we decided to apply to the organic materials were the following. First of all is the proteomics. This is the aim is to identify the species of animal based on the analysis of set of proteins. So it is called also the zooarchaeology by mass zooarchaeology by mass spectrometry. So, and it is applicable to leather, bone, and or for example, antler artifacts in our cases. What does it mean? That we need to make some kind of sampling techniques, and we decided to use the two less the minimum destructive and the minimum invasive techniques. First one is called the PVC eraser method, when we just take the sample and very, very gently by the ordinary PVC eraser just try to get these proteins out of this object. Because of the electric charge, the PVC, the loose proteins, just they stuck to this PVC eraser, and then we have a chance to further on just to make analysis and understand the species of the animal. And the second technique of sampling technique was called forced bag method. So when you just put the object into the bag, and the plastic bag, and then you very gently massage it. It is absolutely non-destructive and absolutely non-invasive. And because of this electric charge, these loose proteins, they are left inside of the bag. Then you take out the object, and you have actually, to the naked eye, it is an empty bag, but actually the loose proteins are there, and you can make the analysis out of it. The second is scanning electron microscopy for identification of the, for example, the fur, the hair or fur. It's not possible to use the proteomics for identification of the animal species of the animal. So we are going to take the scanning electron microscopy for identification of these materials. And now gold. Let's talk about gold. This is the core of my PhD research, and this core of my interest actually. First of all, just a bit of the gold resources of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is rich in gold, but 60% of gold resources, of all gold resources of Kazakhstan, located here in East Kazakhstan. So this is very important just to understand that if we look at just zoom in and have a look what kind of gold, not only gold, prehistoric mines still exist in Kazakhstan and have been exploited and mined in the past. You can see this on this map. What I really want just to stress out here and highlight the presence of tin resources. Tin is a rare metal, and it is very important in this context. And I want want you to remember this is a tin-rich region, and you will understand further on why I stress out your attention on it. Okay. Just methods that were used for identification of chemical analysis, the PXRF, and for the trace element analysis, LAICPMS. Over 150 artifacts have been analyzed during the PXRF, and about 25 artifacts using the LAICPMS for trace element analysis. I will show you the video later on. For the manufacturing techniques, we use 3D microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, and micro-CT. You can see the number of objects analyzed under each technique. And now let me just one. I want just to highlight that we finished the analysis of the objects, or how to say the collection of the raw data, 2 weeks ago. So it is just still very. We need to be polished, but I just want to show you, and I think this is the first presentation after the end of the collection of the raw data that I'm presenting. So just bear with me if something is just not very polished. But that is the very preliminary results of that. What we have here is the chemical composition of some of the objects, not all of them, some of the objects, and we see that okay, I will explain it later on. This, you can see that this is quite a pure gold. This is the gold, a bit of silver, and a very small amount of copper. In comparison, for example, with the Colombian gold of the same period, or more or less of the same period, you can see that there is a huge difference. So, the choice of the material of gold alloys in different parts of the world is absolutely different. Whether it is a different traditions, whether it is a just different choice of the metals, it was just to be explored and researched further on. This is the Saka gold work, and you can see the percentage of the gold. And it is mostly natural. It is mostly unalloyed gold in comparison, for example, with the Colombian gold. This is also interesting preliminary conclusions about this Kurgan 4. This is the Kurgan 4, which Rebecca mentioned here about this untouched, unlooted, partially unlooted burial. And what we can see here, this is the burial objects, and they, from the chemical point of view, they're deposited together. They have the same gold source most probably, but these ones are hoard objects. The hoard objects have been placed in the same kurgan, but not inside of the burial itself, and they have another chemical composition. So probably they have been deposited later, or they have another source or another batch. This is the variation between kurgan clusters. Rebecca told you about these two different kurgan clusters, one or symmetries. One is the Shilikti, and this yellow one shows the composition of the Shilikti gold objects. But this one is Yeli Kesazi. Mainly this Yeli Kesazi objects shows the composition of these hoards. They some kind of a commemorative gifts that have been most probably placed later on after the burial, and taken into account how the chemical composition of these objects. We think that probably it was a collective activity or commemorative activity, and many people probably from different regions came and just brought together with them these different gold objects that have different chemical nature. So probably different supply nexus, probably different traditions. And I think that the trace element analysis will have to identify whether the different sources of gold have been used by where this gold came from. And this is how these LASCPMS works. So here is this tray. When we put these objects, there is one restriction from the LASCPMS point of view, because the tray is quite it's not that deep. It is only 22 centimeters. So for example, these 3D objects or some kind of any tall or big objects, they were not possible just to be analyzed. But in any way, we made quite many other we made analysis, trace element analysis of many more flatty objects. Let me show you the just a bit of this how it looks like the LASCPMS. So what we have, what's going on now is the pre-ablation. So we see the pre-ablation or some kind of a cleaning of the surface of the gold. So it is cleaned, and then let me just show you. And after the cleaning, the real ablation is going on. It looks from this perspective, it looks probably scary, but it is not. It is a very surface ablation. It gives us enough information to see the trace elements, but it's not destructive. It is invasive, but not that destructive to the object. So don't worry about that. And what we see here, for example, this is actually the life results of this analysis. And what I know that it is not very good visible, but this peak of the tin, we see that the tin is part of these trace elements on these objects, and it is actually very true for most of these 25 objects that have been analyzed. Tin is the main trace element. This is a beautiful object. This is the Elkone cloud. It consists of the body itself consists of 2 parts, and I will show it to you later on. And so far, we almost 99% sure that these 2 parts have been cast and then joined together, and all these decorations have been joined as well. So it's not the hammer. This is the cast object. And here you can see the 3D microscopic microscopy image of exactly, this is the ear, and this is these granules, and you can see this silver patch on the ear. And let me show you. This is the SEM scanning electron microscope image. This is the same ear, and that is the result. This is the X-ray map showing, and we see the clear enrichment with tin. So this is the tin. This is the inclusion of tin. And then I would like also to show you the results of the scanning of the computer tomography. I'm sorry. So how it looks like, and I hope that here you can see that actually it. Let me just show you. Oh, it should be started again. I hope that you can see that it consists of 2 parts. So it consists of 2 parts. Sorry for this. Yes, it consists of 2 parts, and also we can clearly see that it is hollow inside. And you can see also that the horn goes inside of the body itself. So it gives the CT scanning gives us the more detailed information how it looks like without any destruction to the object itself. And that is another video which I really would like to show you. And this is the view of the same object, but from the different angle, from top to bottom. Let me show you. This is the horns. You can see the horns, ears. Then you see this these granulations. Then let's go to get, and that here you can see that consists of two parts, and this is the joining of these two parts. And then this is the body, and very interesting here we can see the bottom of the basement, which is attached to this basement of this body that attached to the base itself. And here we can see even the bubbles from the soldering of the body to the actually to this to the base, to the base of the whole object. Another, just if the elk was made mainly by casting, but for example, this object, this is the hippogriffin, it is made up, it was just a cutting from the gold sheet. Again, we see these patches of this black material, and again we see that this is the tin. We see that this SEM-EDS analysis showed that it is tin. Actually, from when I started the analysis of the objects, when I started to see these patches more and more of different shapes, of different types, some of them were very oxidized or very black. Some of them were just started just the degradation only started, but tin, we see the tin, and this is the tin, as this East Kazakhstan is tin-rich region, that it becomes so clear to me that, okay, this is the local gold, and this is the local production from local gold. But now you can see that these tin patches, they look really ugly, but it was not like this at the beginning when they actually produced these objects. And I will show you based on this example. So this is the oxidized tin. And due to the environment conditions in the burials, of course, it started to oxidize, and degradation of the metal started. But here you can see this very white spots. I hope that you can see them, and this is also tin. So actually, for the goldsmiths who made these objects from the very beginning, it was they're not visible to the naked eye. Only if you look at under the microscope, they're visible. So to the goldsmith who made this, it was no it was just it probably it was not important for just to be involved, for example, in separating the gold and tin, or probably cassiterite ores, because most probably this gold is the alluvial gold, because we see that the tin is also ends up in the alluvial flows. So what they did, they panned the gold. They had the cassiterite as a part of cassiterite is the tin ore, as a part of these panned gold, but they decided just to go on because actually visibly it's not very visible. So it doesn't how to say, it's just not visible. It's fine for these purposes, but it is not fine for others, and we will talk about it a bit later on. A bit about the other techniques. Granulation, beautiful example of the granulation and inlaying with semi-precious stones. This is the plaque from the Kurgan 4. You can see the granules, you can see the inlaying with semi-precious stones. This is the turquoise, and inside is the lapis lazuli. There are no deposits of lapis lazuli in Kazakhstan. So this lapis lazuli was imported to Kazakhstan, either from Afghanistan or probably from a very small deposit of lapis lazuli near the Baikal Lake region. But how we make the granules, because it is also important. This is important. Was an important question for myself as the researcher. The making of the granules. This is the example, which is one of my favorite artifacts from all of this of the exhibition. This is the Saka goldsmithing materials. Again, you see these black patches of tin. But in general, this is such an evidence of local production, of making granules, and then beautiful. And here you see the granules which have this dendritic structure. So we will talk about it later on, but just remember this dendritic structure. There are two main ways of making the granules: pouring gold into water, but then you have a bit irregular shapes of the granules, and they don't have this dendritic structure. And the second is the heating gold dust on plate, and then you have this dendritic structure if the gold has some percentage of copper, of course. And what we see here, this is the scabbard from the same kurgan 4. These granules have been made most probably by pouring them into water rather than heating gold dust rather than heating gold dust. Joining methods. You see these black patches on the surface of and also on the surface of the scabbard, as well as these black patches on the granules itself. And we think that this is the copper salt which was used, because these experiments of Lina Campos showed with copper salt showed absolutely the same, these patches of this black material. Okay, we know three methods of joining joining two gold objects. One of them with copper salt, we discussed and I showed you already. The second one is soldering with metals. It is when you use the metal to solder rather than copper salts. Copper salt is usually the powder of, for example, malachite, joined together with some organic glue and then heated up. Soldering is just soldering with metal. And autogenous welding, when nothing is added but just the surface, when you heat gold with gold, and you have to, and then you have this joining. But it is a very delicate, very delicate technology of joining. And I would like to show you the joining on some kind of an extreme case of joining techniques based on the materials from the Saka burials. This is the microbits, Saka microbits from Shilikti symmetry, and just look at the scale. The diameter is about 1 millimeter, and they managed to join the loop inside of these microbits. Let's have a look how they managed to do it. That is this area which I show you here, and what we can see is this dendritic structure. We see dendrites, and we see that it's most probably copper was involved in this in production of this joining. But in comparison with other objects, none of the microbits that I analyzed, they have no copper at all. I mean, the overall chemical composition of the microbits, they don't have copper. So this was a deliberate choice of gold alloy that don't have copper for making the microbits. But the analysis of this joining showed that it is enriched in tin and it is enriched in copper. So it is very distinctive, very local way of making the joints using the tin, because most probably because tin, as well as copper, it decreases the melting point of the gold alloy, and then you can make this joining without melting the whole artifact. I absolutely love this photo. But you can see here that this is also, it shows the dendritic structure, but it doesn't show any copper. I do not know whether it is because of the neither tin nor copper. Is it because of the leaching of copper during the that happened in the soil, or what? Any other reason? I still do not know. I need just to research it more. In general, this one of my final images, but I just want to stress out that microbits played a big role for the Saka people. We see at least 7 or 8 different types of microbits on our exhibition, and there are many more in Kazakhstan. So the diversity of microbits they produced are just absolutely amazing. So diameter here, for example, you can see is 1 millimeter. Look at the scale, it's sometimes less than 1 millimeter. And they're very tiny. And if you look at the surface, we clearly see this is the individual hot temperature production. They have not been made of a gold sheet. It's just individual hot temperature production. Another type of the microbits that we discussed already today is the shoe microbits. I think the production of these microbits is more obvious. They have been made out of the gold strip that was folded twicely, and then they have been sewed to the shoes of this teenage boy. But I want just to the last image that I want just to show you is not gold, it is turquoise triangle. And it is interesting because it is so tiny, and we discussed it with Rebecca just recently, because we managed to bring more than 300 artifacts to this exhibition, and we discussed what it was to bring, for example, these kind of artifacts, these small artifacts to the exhibition, and delivering so many. And then I made the I made the microscopic photography image of this artifact, and then we said together, yes, because this is a real craftsmanship for me. Beautiful, elegant. I don't know, we do not know what was used for, but for me it is just I've made these images during the very last days of the research, and I was really pleased to have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed that. And having seen the exhibition too, it added so much more to it. I have a few questions, and then we'll see if we have other questions. One is the website is live, isn't it? You have 2 websites, one for the exhibition and one for your work, Saltanat, is that right?
As I know, yes, probably Susi can also give more comments, if not Rebecca, but yes, we have the exhibition and also the exhibition website, and another one is for the research themselves. I had no chance to update the research website so far because we were so much involved in the research themselves. So we're going to do this, and we'll provide more information.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that'll be great. I could see why you didn't have time to update it. So much work. I mean, it's just impressive, so impressive. And some of those techniques I'd never seen before. So I also wanted to ask you, I think you showed some tools in the exhibition. For example, how did they cut is there evidence how they cut the sheet, the gold sheet? Because there's so many objects that were very different, because they were done with this gold sheet and then joined and so on. It was really something I hadn't seen before. But did you have some evidence for the tools?
It's a brilliant question, actually, because no, we don't, because this is the funeral context, and we don't have tools, at least not many of them, as I know. Mm-hmm. So we need to start the excavation of the settlements. That's clear. Oh. This was not a. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I do not know. Probably this is logical that usually archaeologists start to excavate the the funerary complexes before the settlements. But now I think that during the last 10 years, we started to excavate settlements, and we really hope to find goldsmithing workshops to see more actual the places and the tools that were used for production of these artifacts, because based on what I know now, this was local production, local gold, local production.
Great. So I guess, in fact, that kind of leads to a question. Another question I have is, the mounds are still under threat, obviously. So perhaps I have two questions. One, I suppose the settlement sites are less under threat, so that may be why they haven't done those yet. But is there a way of protecting? I mean, there's so many of them. Are there prioritizing some of the burial mounds? Is there a way of protecting them?
There's so many of them in Kazakhstan. You just, if you open the Google Maps, and you will see them. They're not just thousands, they're hundreds of thousands of them. And it is very hard to protect them, taking into account also that our borders are open to some of the countries, and also the population in Kazakhstan is not that rich. And I understand that it is a big incentive to start opening these kurgans. Yeah, at the moment, I don't see a very effective way of protecting all of them. Probably some of them, yes, they are protected, but not all. It's not possible.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right. Are there any questions? Are there anything in Q&A? I don't see any. Oh, anybody have any questions?
Some nice comments from people.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh yes, stunning objects and such interesting research. Wish I'd visit the exhibition. We'll look. What's the rest about? Right. Okay. Susi, is everything packed and going back, or how's
yes.
Oh.
It's all packed and it's left the museum.
Oh, good.
Saltanat probably knows more than I actually, but we did. We also packed, the Fitzwilliam packed, as well as.
I must admit, as a conservator going through the exhibition, I was worrying the entire time how those things would be packed. I mean, there were the beads. I think one case had 10,000 beads in it. Unbelievable. It would be great to see if you have, well, I don't know if you're able to, but to show sort of how another time how things were actually packed, but it might be tricky to do. Are there any packaging methods that you recommend or work well?
Because there's so many tiny things, but we use very small pieces of tissue basically, and it was tricky, and we didn't always use the same method. We sort of experimented with different methods of containing things, but the main thing was just to protect things from abrading against each other, because we did have to pack some things, physically in the same space. So, no, we managed. It took time and patience, but we did manage.
I think in that first burial, the beads were. Did Rebecca mention the way the beads were displayed, a sort of recess or something?
There was a sort of disc-shaped recess underneath the fabric. So the fabric was made to fit, and in the center of the sort of lens-shaped recess, there was just a little teeny pin to just keep everything falling into the pit, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's clever.
And we had to do that in several cases, that, for example, the gold granulation, these irregular shaped globules, we had to sort of create a little bit of a pit to contain them. And there were other materials on that same deck. So it had to just be carefully planned, and
I didn't see that, so it's very subtle. So it's really good. It worked.
Yeah, and fortunately in the end we didn't have to pin very many things, because I think that would have been quite difficult given how thin some of the foils were and also the condition. So there were a few things that were displayed upright in wall showcases that needed to be pinned. But by and large, the material, and in fact, because so much of it is used on clothing, on textiles, I felt it didn't detract to actually lay them flat on fabric. Actually was a little bit how they would have been seen on a garment. So exactly. Fortunately that worked out.
There was a question. Did you see that, Louisa?
There's a question for Saltanat. If you will be publishing your research, and you answer that yes, you will do in the future.
Yes, I will. Just one of the comments that preliminary results, I mean, have been published, but very, very preliminary. Published in the catalog of the exhibition. There's an article of myself and Marcos Martino Torres. But yeah, they're very preliminary. But of course, I plan to. Yes, I plan to. I would like to. after all this research done, after all this, yes.
Absolutely, fantastic. Right, there's a question.
There's another question for Saltanat from Alison. She says, really fascinated to hear about the simple non-invasive methods of sampling, the eraser and the bag methods. And they're wondering if they're going to be published as well anywhere. You're muted, Saltanat.
Yes. The method themselves, yes, they are published by I mean, in different articles. Ours, we hope to publish it probably next year. So yes, but in general, there are publications about this topic, that not many of them specifically about this forced bag method, but I think if I remember two of them I remember. Yeah.
Do you work in Kazakhstan as well at a research institute there?
Unfortunately, there are no archaeological, I mean, there are no archaeological laboratories in Kazakhstan, unfortunately. So, so it is a matter of, I hope that for progress and development of the archaeological science as a discipline. So yes, yeah.
Any other questions
about the copper and iron? Right? As I understood, is it?
Yeah, that was actually my question. I noticed when we were handling the materials, there's quite a bit of multi-metal use. So gold set on and also in iron and copper alloy. And I was just wondering whether you will have a chance to study that material as well.
Yes, I did, not many of them, but for example, this iron bracelet with gold gilded, I can say the gold gilded iron bracelet. This is a very specific and very unique technology for the Saka people when they covered iron with gold and even carved iron. We do not know what tools have been used because carving iron is quite a task, I can say. So you can use either steel or, for example, high tin copper. So it is under researched. I'm quite sure that it is absolutely under researched materials. Iron plus gold. It needs to be researched more. But I have the composition analysis. I made the composition analysis of these objects, at least two of them, and also the CT scanning, computed tomography of two of them. So I think that we have some initial data about it that still needs to be just a bit think about.
Right. What about?
I think I have a question regarding the zooms analysis. So how do you extract the proteins from the PVC eraser or the bag? Do you just shake them at the machine?
No. This specific. First of all, let's just say this is the first experience for me. Was also of the sampling, and I did it with one of my colleagues who is an expert on this. So we sampled it together. So it is quite. You just erase it, and I don't know how to call it in English when you have these leftovers of this eraser, and these proteins they keep inside of this mass, and then using the some kind of chemicals you can extract these proteins out of this mass. So we plan to start this analysis, at least the pilot project of this analysis, of this making of such analysis, I hope in March here in Cambridge. So we will see. That's why we took, actually what we did with this proteomic sampling is that we did both sampling. We sampled each object using these both techniques. So actually we have, for example, we have more than 50 organic objects, and we have now more than 100 samples because both of the techniques were used. So even from the methodological point of view, I think it will be interesting to see how effective this or that technique, and just to make this comparison.
Yeah, as you can see, we're all really interested about using a rubber to extract samples from bone objects, because there's a lot. There's those, like Fiona was asking as well, and so we're all mesmerized by the technique.
When you say it's a pilot, are you the first ones?
No. I mean for the no. You are not one, definitely not. Yeah. But I mean for the pilot, I mean that we just need, in order just to continue, because we can't just do all 100 if, for example, we realize that okay, this Fosbeck method doesn't work for this probably. So probably we just should switch to only to the PVC eraser method and make the analysis using them. So we will try just to make a few of the both, just to extract the proteins from both of these methods for a few artifacts. That's what I'm calling pilot. And then we will continue with others.
Okay, good. I have another question. When you know how you have to fill out surveys after you see exhibitions, and this I had to do one for yours. That one, which was quite much more involved than others. I think it might have been an Arts Council survey or something. Do you know about the surveys that the visitors were asked to do? And have you had any results? And what about audience reaction to the exhibition, basically?
I know that probably that is what's broader for me, and people just the people who actually were with me or when I walked them through. Of course, they liked it, but probably it is a bit biased. But what I heard from for example from Rebecca, because she received many emails from visitors, as I know, it was very positive. And actually, probably you know that it was included by the Apollo magazine in the 6 best exhibitions in the world of 2021, and it was the only archaeological exhibition out of the 6. So just actually we say that this is the best archaeological exhibition in the world of 2021.
I would vouch for that. So
I would just say I think because it's still quite recent, I know that the Fitzwilliam often does do evaluation, and there were also a number of public events for families, and I don't know the detail of that at all, but I think this exhibition was maybe slightly, I don't know if that's exactly true, but I was going to say shorter in length than some, and again, because it was partially because of the restrictions of the loan, but I'm sure there will be some sort of evaluation from the museum about the visitor experiences, but in general, people seem very positive.
Oh yeah,
I think it's very immediately appealing, and the design of the exhibition, I think people also liked the sort of quietness and that you could explore it.
The big images. Really lovely, yeah. And I learned a new word. argali with the little rams. The little, I mean, everything was just so sweet and lovely. So just lovely, and little sitting on clouds. I mean, it was just, you know, I've never seen anything quite like it. So, oh, Kenny, if there aren't any more questions, I think we're just about to our time. No more questions. Well, that just remains for me to thank you so much. I mean, it really was fantastic, and I hope people who couldn't attend will catch up with it. I also, actually, I also wanted to say what a lovely thing to hear on such a grim day for the world. So, and especially for your part of the world, Saltanat. Thank you also to Louisa and always expertly managing the Zoom IT and doing our rehearsals and so on. So I just hope to see you all at the next one in March. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.